Hey all, I have here my tinting tutorial, and in this tutorial it also covers converting to black and white. And so it's like two tutorials all wrapped up into one. And there is so much information in this tutorial to cover that I'm going to continue to pop this up to refer to it so that I do not leave out anything that we need to be covering. And also it will help you to follow along in the written PDF. I would suggest that since there's so much in this video that after you watch a portion of it, hit the pause button and go and actually do that in Photoshop Elements, and then come back and replay the video, restart the video to watch the next portion. Hands-on learning is one of the best ways to learn, and so I recommend that you do that. So let's go ahead and get started in converting to black and white. And here is the first method, and I have my photo opened up here in Photoshop Elements already. And the easiest way to convert to black and white, well, before I do that, I'm going to show you that I do have a copy of my photo made in the layers palette. That way I can turn this one off, make it invisible, and tuck it away. In case I goof up this one, I've always got another one to play with. So the first method to convert to black and white is to go to the Enhance drop-down menu and then Color, and then Remove Color. Now you'll see beside this it says Shift Control U. You could also use those keyboard shortcuts, but within one click you now have your photo color removed. And that would be satisfactory. That would be just fine and work well. But there's always more than one way to do things in Photoshop Elements. Another way to remove the color would be to go to the Enhance drop-down menu, Adjust Color, Adjust Hue and Saturation, which brings up your Hue and Saturation box. You can also just press Control U on your keyboard to bring this up, and then simply take out all the saturation in your photo. And then it turns to black and white. And that's also just another really cool tip. It helps you understand how this hue and saturation that we use so much works. I'm going to hit cancel though, so we can go back to color and we can look at our next method. Now this is probably the best method if you really want artistic photos, wanting to go to the next level. The first two ways are just fine. There's nothing wrong with them. I often use them. It depends on how particular I want to be. But this is a really cool way. And let's see. If you go to the Create Adjustment Layer icon over here on top of the Layers palette, and then choose Gradient Map, you'll see it already comes up here, and it has either the last used gradient map or a default one, and it's already changed my color, my photo to this funky red. I'm going to double click right here, well actually it's a single click, to bring this up, and I'm going to choose this black to white gradient. Let's move this over here out of the way, and now you can see how already this is a much more effective black and white photo. But what's great with this is now you can play with this to tweak it even more by moving the sliders. And this one on the bottom, the white color stop, is actually often the most effective one to move. and you can move these over here. You can move them all around, and you can see as I'm doing that over here the different variations that I'm getting with this black and white. And then you just click OK there and click this OK. And now you have an adjustment layer above your photo. What's great about using this method over the other ones is that it has not permanently affected the photo. So if I wanted to make this adjustment layer invisible, you would see my original photo as it was. And then I can apply it again. If I want to change it up some more, I can just double click on this icon and open this up again and move those sliders once more. You'll notice some of the techniques later will use adjustment layers, but those adjustment layers are going to have to be above this gradient map layer in order to be effective. And so you'd have to know a little bit more about adjustment layers if you're using multiple adjustment layers. But we're going to turn that off and go back to our original photo and see what's next. Oh, let me recall, since I last wrote this tutorial, they added in Photoshop Elements yet another way that you can change to black and white. If you go to the Enhance drop-down menu, you're going to see here Convert to Black and White, and they have a handy tool here, and you can choose the various styles and also change the channels here until you get something that you like in this way. This is not in the tutorial because at the time I wrote the tutorial in Photoshop Elements 3 they did not have this, and so this is yet another way to convert to black and white, and it's similar to using the gradient map where you can get variations of the black and white. It's a really cool tool. Okay, now let's go back to the tinting tutorial. And now that we've converted it to black and white, we can tint the photo. And here's the first, most easiest way to do that. I'm going to create a new layer and then get a foreground color. I'm going to get something that might make it sepia toned. I'm going to fill it with the new layer with the paint bucket tool, and then just lower my opacity on this. Now you can see it's tinted it. Oh, yeah, it would help if I had a black and white layer, wouldn't it? Let's just quickly go and do the easiest one. Okay, there. Now you can see it's tinted it, but it's a little bit hazy. Changing the wrong layer. Okay, so that's one way that you could quickly tint a photo. But now let's go down, and the next part of the tutorial suggests also playing with the blending modes for this brown layer that I have going on here. And you can see if I use the multiply mode with it, that one actually gives a very cool tinted effect. And so I'm sure some of these others, there's a really cool one. And so you play with the opacity and the blending modes together to get the most effective use of tinting in this manner. Okay, so let's turn that layer off and go and look at the next method. Oh, here it says the possibilities are endless, because I can take this and I'm just going to hit Control U to bring up this Hue and Saturation slider, and I can change this layer, this brown layer, to any color. And you know, this is how we make our children blue, like the little blueberry lady in that one movie. I can't think of the name of it. Okay, so you can change this to any color. The colors choices are endless. There, I kind of like that green color there. Move the lightness slider, make it a little darker. And for this photo, that's effective. And so let's turn that invisible and see what's next. This is why I'm going back and forth to my tutorial, so I do not forget anything. Here is another really simple way to convert this. In the effects palette, if you go down and find photographic effects, right here are different tones that you can just with a click apply a layer style to it to change the color. Here is the sepia tone, which is the one you see us use most. So if I double click on it, you're going to see that that immediately gives it a perfect sepia tone, and really like that. But you can change it to any one of these tones. And this is a adjustment, or is a layer style, so you can actually get rid of it just like you would any other layer style. And that's often a way I go in to tint my photos. Very quick and easy, and really effective. Okay, now we're going to tint with the Hue and Saturation. And you saw me do this a little bit earlier, but we're going to apply it directly to our black and white layer. Control U to bring up that Hue and Saturation. Now you're going to notice that when we move the sliders, it doesn't do anything to our photo. What you need to do is hit this colorize button, and then you can effectively change the hue and saturation sliders, and you can see there is a nice sepia tone there. And so you can do that, but once again, we're working directly on this layer and it's affecting it permanently. That's okay if we've got a backup layer to start over. But this is another way yet that you can change that. There's always a zillion ways to do one thing in Photoshop Elements, so let's move on to the next one. You can also, rather than permanently changing this with the hue adjustment layer, go to the Create Adjustment layer, Hue and Saturation, and then change, we're going to want to colorize again, and then change them from here. This is the same way as what we were just doing, with one difference. It's created an adjustment layer above the black and white. So if we turn this layer off, as we did before, you're going to see it has not permanently affected our black and white. And so this is actually a better way to do it than applying it directly to the photo, because we can click on this and open it up and fix it and close it back out. So we're clicking right here on the adjustment, double clicking to bring this right back up to continue working on it and changing it if we want, and yet it still has not affected the original photo. And I think I'm going to tell you about this here, but I want to check my tutorial next. Oh no, that's not what I tell you about next. Somewhere in there, in the tutorial I remember reading, I'm going to be sharing more about this. And so the next thing in the tutorial, it suggests to leave your photo, we're going to go back to this one, in color, and then when you bring up this new adjustment layer, go ahead and I'm going to choose green since my photo is mostly green. Choose one of the channels and then change it, and you're going to see that it's tinting only the greens in my photo. And there I've made quickly, leaving the path in black and white because it's not green and I'm in the green channel, but I've quickly made a little purple fairy land in my photo here. And so that's yet another way, by applying it to an original with color, that you can have even more fun. Okay, let's see what's next. And here it is. This is where I'm going to show you a little bit about these two layers over here. This one opens up whatever you're adjusting. This one happens to be, here's our choices, the Hue and Saturation one. You remember earlier we used the gradient map one, and so when we clicked on it, it brought the gradient map up. The right one is the layer mask, and I have another tutorial that covers this, so I'm not going to go into it a whole lot. But if you click on it and then fill it with all black, you're going to see that it goes back to its original color. And if I wanted to use a white brush, I could manually make this effective to whatever part of my photo that I wanted it to be effective on. And so you'll have to go and watch the other tutorials to learn a little bit more of that. Now here's what's a little bit frustrating, is if you grab this layer mask and drag it up to the trash can, it asks you if you want to delete the layer mask only, and look what it does. It leaves the hue and the saturation in there by itself. And so you would also have to drag that up to the trash can to fully get rid of that layer. And so that's just a little tip that can be confusing if you are deleting that layer in that manner when you're first learning how to work with them. They do delete separately there. Okay, let's go on into the next. Tinting with free filters, and I'm sure you can get free layer styles and many other things out there, but one of the most popular ones is Virtual Photographer, and I recommend getting it, and maybe I'll do a tutorial on it someday, but let's just look at it very carefully. There's a whole bunch of presets in here, and these are changing the color at the top, but if you go down, some of them, this one here is black and white, and that changes it to black and white, and this one will give it a blue tone. And you can just go in here and just click on their defaults to see what each one of them does, and you have your preview over here that you're watching. There's newspaper, here's satin steel, and this one actually gives it more of a faded, like blending look. Here is their sepia, which is really a really vibrant sepia. I like the way it looks. Just a wide variety. And then on top of that, after you pick one of these, you can change their preset to something further. by playing around with the choices over here. Here's the color picker that they used in their preset. If you didn't want that sepia tone, you could make it a different one. So you can do a myriad of things with this program, and then once you choose something, click process, and I'm not going to do that right now because it takes a moment to process it, but click process and it will apply it to your layer. Now remember that this one also permanently affects your layer, and so you're going to want to be applying it to a copy of your photo or element or whatever you're working with, rather than on the original. That way, if you don't like what you have, you can always start over. Oh, so many ways to tint. Is there not so many ways? Here's the next way. This is tinting with color variations. And let's go back to this black and white one. Actually, I think, no, we're working on a colored one in this one. The Enhance drop-down menu, adjust color, and you're going to see color variations. And now I really need to do a tutorial on this specifically, so we're just going to quickly hit this, but you'll see this down here looks a little bit confusing. Well, it is confusing because they've taken out some text that they used to have in Photoshop Elements 3 to tell you what each of these are. And basically this is red, green, and blue. You'll see this vertical line to divide it. This is lightening and darkening. And so this increases the red, decreases the red in the photo. This increases the green, this decreases the green in the photo, and the same with blue. Then you can also lighten, darken things. So when you bring it up, it's going to come up with a default around this area here. But you can see if you make it a more dramatic change of color, it actually will tint. And I can click on, say, this one, and immediately turn this to blue, lighten it a little bit if I want. Nope, it doesn't work when I lighten it. And this one will change it to this color. I'm not going to go into great detail with this, but you can see here, you can just click around and look at the before and after. You can tint it in this way. If you don't want the changes to be quite as drastic, you can change these things here. You can just get around in here and play and kind of familiarize yourself with it, and I will go into detail with it in another tutorial. But once again, when you click OK, it makes that permanent change to that photo. I'm going to hit undo. But that's yet another way you can get some tinting. And I believe, yes, this is the last way in the tutorial, and I hope you've been having fun doing this, because it's always so much fun to play in Photoshop Elements and just see what you come up with, and it really keeps your digital scrapbooking addictive when you're playing and you come up with something that looks really artistic and you're like, wow, that's going to make a cool layout with a photo tinted like that. So here is yet one more way that you can tint. It's with a third adjustment layer. And so we're going to open the photo filter adjustment layer. And you can see it's set up for a warming. And I can, well, this is not working well on the colored one. So I must have done this on the black and white when I wrote the tutorial. Whoops. New adjustment layer, photo filter. There we go. And so you can choose some of these. That one's not doing much of a difference. There's kind of got a red tint to it. you'll see you can change the density of this and bring it up, and there we have a nice more of a sepia tone. But you can choose the standard. So there it turns into the blueberry muffin one. Here is sepia right here. And so there it has changed it into a sepia tone right there. But you can also, instead of using one of their filters, choose your own color and open it up and pick any color to apply. And right now, let's do something totally different, like make it purple. There we go, so that you can see how that works. And if you want it a little less purple, we can turn it down. So that's yet a very last way, and probably not the last way. There's, I'm sure, many more ways, but that's the last way covered in our tutorial to tint your photos. And so I hope that you've learned a lot with this tutorial. It's covered a lot of different tools in Photoshop Elements. Hopefully it's opened your eyes to whole new worlds of things that you can do in Photoshop Elements. And thank you so much for watching, and have fun.